Now, as you may have heard on Arise News, the final result of the presidential election in Kenya has emerged. That ballot is being seen as a sort of mirror for the Nigerian election in 2023. There are ethnic considerations, a young population yearning for change, similar constitutional provisions for the practice of multi-party democracy, similar core issues defining the ballot, and an incumbent president who is not a candidate. There's also the hope that, as in Kenya, technology will have a positive influence on the outcome of the election in Nigeria, enhancing a free and fair poll in 2023. So what inspiration can Nigerians draw from the conduct of that Kenyan ballot, especially given the demographic, cultural, historical, and political differences between the two countries? Or do the similarities outweigh those differences? And I should mention that William Ruto has been announced as the winner of that ballot. Well, for her assessment, I'm joined now in the studio by the director of the prominent West African think tank, the Center for Democracy and Development, Idayat Hassan, who was part of the international team observing the Kenyan elections. And she only just got back at the weekend. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. You were there in Kenya up till, as I said, this weekend as part of the International Election Observer team there. Make sense of what has happened with this election for us and lead us through some of the complexities of the last few hours.
Oh, thank you very much, Charles. It's been a very interesting elections, and in several ways it's actually similar to the Nigerian elections, or what we proposed to do in the 2023 elections. Politically, I think it's also similar, because you look at three very strong but important things defining these elections. One is the role of technology, incumbency, and the judiciary itself. In the prelude to the elections, there was a lot of judicialization of matters of pure politics, even up to the use of the Kim's kits, which is the equivalent of the beavers, which we will be using in our elections. And if I use that as just one small example, you find that a few days to the elections, there had been a court order saying that the manual register should actually be made resort to as against the Kim's kit itself. But eventually, one thing that is also a lesson is that the Court of Appeal decision, few hours into the elections, reinstated the provision of their electoral act, allowing for this, for the use of the Kim's kits, not supplanting the manual register itself. And this Kim's kit actually worked perfectly when you look at it, which is the beavers. It wasn't a problematic one the way we actually thought it was going to be problematic. It took between the 2 minutes and 7 minutes for a voter to conclude voting itself. People were authenticated using their thumbprint, not their faces, and this authentication worked. In only few places where it did not work, you find that they were older people and living in rural area who possibly would have had issues with their fingers itself. So that was a seamless exercise. But what also made it seamless had to do with the calmness, the discipline, and the trust in the government, the electoral system, irrespective of the fact that they had a dip in their turnout to 65% in these elections. But everybody was disciplined, calm, and they worked through the process seamlessly in that regard itself. Incumbency was also a very important factor when you look at the fact that the incumbent president did not support his deputy president, William Ruto, but actually went and supported his former foe, Raila Odinga, and together they put together what they call the Azimio coalition and the Kenya Kwanza, which was for the William Ruto itself. But this incumbency, when we are looking at the outcome of these elections today, we have been able to see that it did not also show the will of the people really matter, and framing actually mattered, because when you see the way they actually projected William Ruto, it was a rejection of dynastic politics.
Absolutely.
It was that thing that gives hope to everybody. You see, you could see hope in the eyes of the people. What they wanted to see was how a chicken seller could rise up and get to that point. And also this whole campaign slogan, not just the Hustler Nation, but the Hustler Fund, where it had projected to give out some monies to people. And people feel like, okay, and people were voting. Then loyalty, I think, also matters. Political alliances, which we saw within the APC and during the APC primaries itself, where we had some Northerners say that, look, if we renege on our support to a particular candidate, I think that politically the North will not be trusted again. We also saw that where ethnic politics, the alliance between the Kikuyus and the Kalenjins could not be supplanted with what Uhuru had done with the Luos. You even find the vice presidential candidate, the female, Mata, she got like 300 and something in her polling unit, where William Ruto got more than 900 votes in the polling unit itself. So all this comes together, and technology, I think it's actually a positive. I think the introduction of this high rev that we have has been able to change the whole context of what elections really will look like, because you are having a transmission of this result instantly.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I think will be a lesson for us is that infrastructures are very, very important.
Yeah. Are they better in Kenya than
They are
here?
better in Kenya.
Yeah.
In terms of road, in terms of the 4G, I observed the election out of the capital city. And I'll tell you that that is like a suburb of the suburb of the suburb, real rural. They had a 4G internet. But we should not again be afraid that, oh, because of internet connection, we cannot use our BVAS, because you have to understand that is an offline. Everything has been pre-programmed. Once you get to where there is internet
Yes, I see what you mean. Yeah.
you can get it on, and people can look at it. The citizens can watch the vote.
And that's an important thing, because the IEBC in Kenya put all the results from all the polling stations on a public portal that any Kenyan could see and check the results. I mean, that speaks to transparency and outweighs any argument of election fraud, doesn't it?
Exactly, and it's the same we've been doing with the result viewing platform HiRev since the Edo elections, where it was trialed, I think, during the Nasarawa elections, but that was a very small one. But since the Edo elections, we started using the HiRev, where we can monitor the upload itself. Then we can also look and analyze the result as well, and immediately. And again, I think what is important is the polling unit result becomes like the final result. So all those things that happen during the collation, that you can go with gun, you can disrupt the system, it's again reduced to the barest minimum.
But let me ask you this then, because you were an observer there. Do you see any justification in the protests that are coming out now against the results, that, you know, the Raila Odinga camp almost certainly going to go to court about this? Because just before, I mean, you were talking about the IEBC, the Electoral Commission, being, you know, doing a very good job. Just before William Ruto was announced, the Electoral Commission, part of it, met to say that they are not in agreement with the results. I understand that there were 4 out of the 7 commissioners who said they were not part of the result, and they complained about the opaqueness of the counting process. As an observer yourself, what do you make of that?
I think that Kenyan elections has always been like that. With each elections, it comes with new sets of dynamics and contestation. And their election is very highly judicialized. Now, there is a difference in the Kenyan system. In the Nigerian judicial system, we talk about substantial irregularity. For their own system, they do not talk about substantial irregularity. And when you go and look at the decision of the court in Minor Kai and 2 others versus IEBC in 2017, the election again, if you remember in 2017, I remember writing about this. These elections was cancelled based on just like Form 34B, not even 34A, saying that those votes could not be properly accounted for amidst others in this system. So they are not looking for substantial irregularity. And if you run, they had to do another elections. where, of course, the other candidate, Raila, decided to pull out. So it will not also be out of place when they go and their electoral jurisprudence then quashes this report. But the result of the polling unit remains very
absolutely
paramount. And I think there is one lesson we should actually learn again, which we must point, the polling, how we really need to be very wary of polling, especially in a very volatile country like Nigeria. Ahead of the elections, there were a lot of polls coming up. In fact, if you see the newspaper a week to the elections, all the polls were actually giving Raila leads and creating this belief in people that really he was going to win the elections. Not many people are aware of the fact that polling can actually be political. I put my research question out. I bring people who are very, very close to me and they know how to do this. Or I hire my consultants and I start giving favorable figures, reeling it out. But be that as it may, it's a close election. And I feel that I cannot judge what the elections really are. But I think being very close, somehow the right thing must actually have been done, and the rest is left for the court to actually determine.
So do you see the Kenyan election as a mirror of the Nigerian ballot in 2023, or are there too many variables that make a mirror comparison difficult?
I think that the mirror comparison in terms of the politics, I think, are quite different. Because what happened in Kenya, which our political parties have refused to learn from, is that they created this big coalition. They call it coalition, but it could serve as an alliance if you want to look at it, because the parties are not subsumed into one. So you had the Kenyan Kwanza, who still had all the supporters, Ford, all these parties. They still contested at the level of the county. Some got governors. They got MPs, but they were together for the presidential elections. The same way the Jubilee, of course, went with ODM, the Raila's, the Uhuru's party, Raila's party, and another 8 others. So between 14 parties, they all formed they formed a coalition to prosecute this presidential election. So they brought together their forces and they were able to win. So I have a county to deliver. And they had an agreement already how they were going to share position. I think this is very, very positive. Very positive. So 3 states, I think that is a lot. I think that's what they have to learn as in the political parties.
Right.
The second learning really for us is that trust is very important. We really have to trust the system. We have to trust our electoral commission. We have to trust that things could actually work and it will help. Because when you see the orderliness of the citizens, as early as 5:15 that the poll was actually opening, everything was there. It was not like it was perfect the night before, to be candid. Some still had delayed materials distribution. But by 5:15, the polls was there. Everything was there. The people were well lined up. The officials, they were the same 6 like we will put and say this one is a queue, something. But they worked the right way. They were very civil. They were very calm. A nation at times do not get beyond what we cannot do beyond our people. So it was not just about sabotage. Here we were not dealing with the sabotage of politicians trying to sabotage the system. We also had the citizens working very well. Then the training of the election officials, I think, was well done.
So those are lessons that Nigeria needs to learn.
They need to learn. Then, of course, they had this 4G internet, which really worked very well. The infrastructures were quite good.
Right. Okay. I want to thank you very much indeed. Idayat Hassan is the director of the West African think tank, the Center for Democracy and Development, and she was part of the international team observing the Kenyan elections. Thank you very much indeed.